American resident Philando Castile was shot and killed in front of his family by an American police officer. British resident Edir Frederico Da Costa was also killed here in East London after being stopped by police. Both men were black, and in both cases no one has been found guilty of their killing. In fact, the American police officer responsible for Philando Castile's death was acquitted, despite video evidence that seemed to show he was cooperating with the police at the time of his shooting.
The police officer who killed Philando Castile joins a long line of officers who have been acquitted after killing a black man on camera. Campaigners have repeatedly questioned why the police keep getting away with what many claim are unlawful killings of black men and women, even though there is often a clear video record of the deaths and how they occurred. The deaths in East London resulted in a march demanding justice, which then escalated into riots and violence towards local police. 6 officers were injured, 4 of them seriously, in the clashes, as rioters threw objects towards police and started fires. 4 people were arrested for offences including disorder, arson and criminal damage. Protesters, some of them carrying Black Lives Matter posters, joined others with homemade placards which read "Justice for Edson" and how many more. Angry words were also exchanged between protesters and the police.
Should the British police carry guns? And are there similarities between the UK and the US regarding deaths in police custody? Simple questions with important answers. Let's start with this. Why have relations between the police and the black community become so bad at this moment? We put that question to the public here in the United Kingdom and in the United States. Here's what we learned.
I think history has really just created a tough climate, and people are having trouble getting over the past for valid reasons in many cases.
I think it just has to do with not enough dialogue between the communities and the police departments. In a lot of situations you have police that don't actually live in the communities, and they can't really understand the environment that they're in and so forth. Yeah.
Just a couple of bad situations kind of mirroring the relationship that we kind of have already. I mean, generally we are happy with the police. They're here to protect us, keep us safe. But we have had a few instances, and I guess a lot of tension around in the communities, and you know, it's not fortunate, but that's how it is right now.
Because most people don't know how to use their mind. First thing you have to recognize in yourself that you have a demonic spirit and a Holy Spirit. If you cannot differentiate between a demonic spirit and a Holy Spirit, you don't know how to use your mind. Okay? We as black people need to realize something. Okay? That there's somebody has authority. Police have authority. If you have a gun, you have authority. If you comply, you stay alive.
Because sometimes the police exaggerate a little bit. They use the power, and they do exaggerate a little bit. Yeah. But I don't say well, you can win, because if you don't do this, they cannot force the law and order, and many people try to exaggerate. So there's a balance between those two. I hope it's going to be a big understanding between police and the local people.
It's just the faith. The community has lost faith in the police. We don't feel that we're taken seriously, I think. And the work that they're supposed to do is not that visible. But when there is supposed to be more help or some kind of assistance, they're never around to help us. So we have lost quite a lot of faith in them as a result. So that's why the tensions have been sort of brewing for a long time.
I just believe that it could be that the populace, the general populace, they don't necessarily agree with some of the police's acts. I wouldn't say that the police is really in fault here. It's just the mindset of people that should be changed, in my opinion, because the police does what it does best, and that's protect us.
So bad at the moment? They've always been bad. There've never been good relationships between our community and the police. And that's because from our parents arrived, they started to criminalise us as a community. They criminalised many of us and they continue to do so. They don't do anything to show that they've changed. They don't do anything to show that they want to change. And they don't do anything to show that they want a meaningful relationship or dialogue with the community. So relationships have always been bad. It's just the way it is.
Over the last 30 years, we've seen a continual deterioration in relations between the black community and the British police, usually sparked by catalyst events like the death of Stephen Lawrence or the shooting of Mark Duggan. But what we do know is that black and ethnic minority confidence in the police in the inner city areas of London is declining year on year. And that's to a large extent due to the level of institutionalised racism within British police services that has remained unaddressed. And in the metropolitan policing area, we've actually seen race equality go backwards in terms of policing.
What should happen to stop deaths in police custody? The public said this.
I think more training for the officers. I mean, I think there's a lot of just overreaction in situations. It's just more of an understanding of the community that they're embedded in.
I feel like if a cop understands that there's other ways that you could get a person to decease without shooting them. I feel like there should be other means of protecting the cops as far as using their number one priority is using the gun. It should be like any other, like a taser or something else. I mean, it's really hard to really say depending on, because sometimes a person might be armed. And I mean, if I was a cop, I'd be scared too. But then me not being a cop, I'm scared for myself because I don't know what that cop might be thinking.
Treating everyone like they're human, respecting people's lives. I mean, even if someone is incarcerated, they still are a human being at the end of the day. So you should still treat them like a human being.
People need to respect authority. Once you respect authorities and you let people know you have no weapons, the police officers, it's just that simple. Respect authority, that's the answer.
What if the authority doesn't respect the people?
Authority don't respect the people, but you still respect authority. You have a gun, you have more authority, I'm going to respect you. If you comply, you'll stay alive.
I think collaboration and we want to know what's happened behind police doors.
What I want to believe that will happen is that the proper authorities are going to take measures against such incidents. And the thing is that when something like this happens, we have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So always trying to deter such incidents would be the right answer to such occurrences.
What needs to happen to stop deaths in police custody, especially the disproportionate amount of black deaths in police custody, is that the police officers have to be held truly accountable for their actions. They shouldn't be allowed to be able to use this cliched term that they acted with an honestly held belief. We don't care what their belief was, we care about the outcome of their action, and they should be held to account for their actions, and the state does everything to ensure that they don't hold police officers to account properly.
I think there needs to be urgent reform of the extent to which people are accessing good medical advice and care whilst they're in custody. I think that the restraining techniques of the police need to be fundamentally reviewed and looked at again. And I also think that the whole disciplinary infrastructure around police engagement, particularly where those arrests are violent, is in need of urgent reform.
Following terrorist attacks in the UK, police chiefs are discussing arming all frontline police. What does the public think of this idea?
I think all police officers and every citizen should be armed. Make it an equal playing ground, right?
I don't know if that really helps. It just makes I think it makes the situation tense when you have a volatile, kind of powder keg type situation. I don't know if it really helps all that much. I mean, when you have visible presence, I guess it's kind of a deterrent, but there's it's kind of catch-22.
You are absolutely right. But we have, to protect the citizens, we have no choice. This is the end time, the end of the age. In the book of Timothy, it's talk about deceived and being deceived. Talking in the book of Revelations, people, at the end time, the end of the age, people are gonna love killing one another, okay? If you don't recognize a demonic spirit in you, you wants to kill. Once you start killing, you can't help it. It becomes an addiction.
Ooh, that's why I love London, because of the police without guns. So they have been respected. They're the most respected policemen in face of the earth, because they don't carry the guns. Yeah, so they have a special brigade if something like. But to carry no guns for the police, that's good. That's why I make England.
I don't think that would work. That would, in fact, cause more fear in the community, knowing that the police have weapons on them. That wouldn't go down really well, because of course that would make them think, the community think they would have to go out and protect themselves also. So
they should give guns to police, because sometimes you see in London Bridge terrorist attack happening so frequent now. So if they have, they can stop them quickly if they have gun. But on the same time, maybe some police officers are very aggressive. They can misuse their gun as well at the same time.
I believe that just by giving a police force guns, it does not mean that they're going to do their job better or they're going to protect them more. I think by giving someone a gun doesn't necessarily promote the fact that police's job, in a sense. I think they have the means to protect us without a gun, and a gun is not the solution, in my opinion. There are the appropriate forces for that.
So if you think you have to, police have to carry the gun and it will stop, let's try it.
I mean, I can understand why they may think that that's an attractive defence, first line of defence against some of the atrocities we've seen recently. But the reality is, even the most professionally trained armed police officer makes mistakes out there. So to go willy-nilly handing out guns to every police officer is kind of disconcerting and frightening to somebody of my skin colour, because we know what happens when we come into connection with police officers. What they'll be doing is shooting us dead on the streets and saying that they had an honestly held belief that we were going to commit some kind of crime that we weren't going to commit. I don't see any real reason for every police officer out there to be armed. The police so far have dealt very well with the atrocities that we've seen, and there's no evidence that if every officer was armed that those atrocities wouldn't have happened.
I think that would be a disaster for modern Britain. I think very much Britain prides itself on having an unarmed police services, and that the sight of having armed soldiers patrolling our streets would send a very, very wrong signal to the majority of the community that we were somehow unsafe. These attacks, although they are very tragic and cost enormous carnage, they are in fact very rare. And so to have a knee-jerk reaction to a problem that can be contained with our pleasant resources would only escalate those issues and the problem. But the Metropolitan Police and the police services themselves have got to fundamentally reform their approach. Their engagement with the Muslim community under the Prevent agenda is something that is causing more alienation amongst those communities than it is gaining intelligence. The extent to which we see operations against the Muslim community under the terrorism banner that turned out to be completely vacuous and where nobody's charged is an issue that has to be addressed. I think the whole credibility of Prevent now needs to be looked at again and reformed into a product that the Muslim community can co-produce and have partnership and confidence in.
According to the charity Full Fact, in the UK, British, African and minority ethnic people have made up about 1/3 of those shot by the police between 2004 and 2016. That's 8 out of the 27 people who died as a result of police use of firearms. By contrast, the British Guardian newspaper reported that in America, 1,091 deaths occurred as a result of police use of firearms in the year 2016 alone. Black males aged 15 to 34 were 9 times more likely than other Americans to be shot by law enforcement officers.
There have been riots here in East London over the death of a black man in police custody. We asked if the public sees similarities between the UK and the US in this regard.
Oh, I think death anywhere of any color is something to get upset about and to be concerned about, so I don't see a difference.
For sure. I mean, they experience the same kinds of, social injustices as we do here, and people sometimes they just get fed up and things happen. I can't really condone, just random violence and destruction and things like that, but sometimes it gets to be too much.
Most definitely. I kind of seen a trend worldwide. So, even if you look in the UK in terms of Brexit, where that was mainly driven whereby the people in the UK were worried about immigrants coming to the UK. It kind of seen a trend, more nationalistic trend happening around the world, where people are, scared of migrants for some reason. So easily what you're seeing in the UK, you are seeing here in the US as well.
Almost definitely. Yes, it's I don't want to say a conspiracy, that may be the perfect word to use. Yes, when it comes, yes, most definitely. The courts and the police, most definitely.
I think, to be honest, here it's much better than the US, for reasons I don't think I should mention.
Go on, you can mention them.
No, it's probably not a good idea, but I do think they're better here because it's just, I guess they do monitor prisoners. They do there's a duty of care here better than in America, in my opinion anyway.
I think in US is the black community is more than England than UK. Yeah, of course. If there are more people, the more people die in custody.
In the regards of black men are being killed in America willy-nilly and in England willy-nilly, and that the authorities, the state refuses to be held to account. When people are asking questions, they don't get the answers to those questions, just like what happened here in Tottenham after the killing of Mark Duggan. So of course there are similarities. We're poor communities living in a white man's land. We're powerless and we're voiceless, and we're being treated as such. And sometimes what that leads to is an anger and a frustration that will boil out, and people will call it riots. We like to more commonly call it uprising, rebellion.
I do, and I think it's the same problem of deeply institutionalized racism. And I think that what you have is a culture within the police services in the US and the United Kingdom that sees black and ethnic minority people as superhuman threats, as if they were in possession of superhuman powers of strength and ability and speed. And they always seem to engage with them with disproportionate force that sometimes ends up tragically, as we've seen in very many cases. So I think that the culture of institutionalized racism means that police officers walk with a stereotype in their head about black people and Muslims, which designate them as hyper dangerous and in need of overwhelming force. And this must be an aspect of policing that is eradicated and stopped, because it is a fundamental assault on our human rights as African, Caribbean and Muslim peoples here in America and the UK.
Does the public feel the police would be shielded from justice if they were to unlawfully kill a citizen?
I think a crime committed by a police officer or just a regular citizen is the same. Just because you're a police officer doesn't mean you're exempt from the law. So it really doesn't make a difference again, to me.
Oh, for sure. It seems like the justice system is heavily tilted in their favor. It's like if you take a look at Philando Castile, you have all the evidence you need on videotape. It's like you have video, you have audio, and there's no conviction. Like there's no accountability. So it's bad.
Shoot first and ask questions later. This country always asks questions first before they shoot. But in a situation where they're risking their lives, they want to go home to their family, they may make mistakes. A lot of times they don't make mistakes.
don't think there's enough convictions around that. Again, it could be protection, it could be lack of evidence, but I do see there is a lot of them being kind of not being brought to justice for reasons we don't know. But I do think it's just lack of evidence and such. But
policemen never kill anyone just like that. Yeah, if there must be some reason, the people doing something wrong, something, if police officer see if it's not good, something happening wrong, then he do. If in America maybe people have, you can have gun, it's legal. You can, anybody can have gun in America, and here you can't have gun. Even police don't have gun here in England.
People are scared of the police because of the fact that they carry guns, and so many deaths have occurred. I think that's absolutely terrible, and you know, if something doesn't change quickly enough, the same emotion is going to spread throughout the world, in my opinion. And I think that's why they should have a system more like ours, where we have our appropriate forces which carry guns essentially, and the community police forces which are just there, you know, just for everyday matters that are just for us to protect us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that they're protected and shielded from justice by the so-called Independent Police Complaints Authority, who are clearly not independent, not just because they have ex-police officers as investigators, but they have lots of people who used to work for the police, including their head of legal services. So as far as I'm concerned, that's just a shield for police officers. The CPS are even worse than the IPCC, because on the few occasions that the IPCC suggests that there should be criminal charges brought, the CPS failed to bring those charges. They're protected. We heard recently the Prime Minister saying that we shouldn't be holding them to the same level of transparency because we need them to do the anti-terrorism work out there. So they're shielded and protected by the entire state, and they're shielded and protected, and it's enshrined in law, because they can go into any court and they can say, I acted on an honestly held belief, regardless of how illogical that belief might be. So they're totally protected, and that's why we've had hundreds of people killed in custody and not one police officer sent to prison for that, or even convicted of any of those offences.
I think the whole scenario of how police officers are treated when there's a suspicious death in custody that particularly results in an unlawful killing has to be looked at. It should result in an automatic criminal investigation. Currently it doesn't. The inquest procedure and the coroner's inquest that looks into the circumstances around the death of individuals needs to be reformed. The disciplinary regulations of the police themselves need to be reformed. If you shoot somebody, whether or not you intended to or not, you should be suspended from duty until the investigation concludes whether or not that was a lawful and a just killing. The fact is that right now officers can shoot individuals and still be on desk duty the day after. So we've got to fundamentally reform the system to give the public confidence that when these tragic events occur, that no stone is being left unturned, that police officers are not being shielded by the criminal justice system, and that the search for truth is facilitated by having the greatest access for the victims to the information they need to prosecute their case.
In America, Philando Castile was shot and killed in front of his family by a police officer, yet the policeman was found not guilty of any wrongdoing. Then in the United Kingdom, Edir Frederico Da Costa was killed after being stopped in traffic, but the officers involved have not even been suspended from their duties.
In both Britain and America, black people continue to be killed by law enforcement agencies. Many feel that the police officers responsible are highly unlikely to be dismissed or found guilty of any crime. Communities then react with violence to what they regard as a fatal injustice towards black residents of America and Britain, in a deadly, vicious cycle which, for now at least, appears to have no end.